Hello there, studio teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast with me, Christina Whitlock. I take great pride in my role here, serving as your anytime piano teacher friend, and I am so glad that you're joining me today. If you are catching this episode in real time, consider this your reminder that my super friends on Patreon are meeting for another session of Teachers Teaching Teachers this Friday, May 29th. We are talking all things recitals this week. I am sharing my recital program full of supplemental repertoire worth knowing, and other members will be sharing their favorite recital rep as well. If you are not already a super friend of the podcast, you can join us for just $9. So head over to christinawhitlock.com/superfriends or click the link in today's show notes to join us. And now, let's get on with the show. You are listening to episode 257 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Okay, friends, today we are tackling a current event of sorts with some very timeless overtones. So the catalyst for this episode is a recently aired segment on a television program called 60 Minutes. In case you don't know, 60 Minutes bills themselves as a television news magazine, and they cover a wide variety of human interest types of stories. The show itself has been under a lot of scrutiny lately, so like everything related to the news, it's messy, right? And we also have to remember it's all driven by finances. There is always a money trail whenever these types of controversies get stirred up. So I want you to keep that in mind, okay? Regardless, there has been a collective uproar in teacher groups online this past week after 60 Minutes first released a teaser for an upcoming segment with the founder of an alternative piano teaching method called the Piam method. Now, in addition to concerns with the method itself, many of our colleagues, myself included, were immediately outraged at the way the story portrayed piano lessons outside of this method. They repeatedly referred to other piano lessons as miserable, strict, stressful. You get the idea. It created a firestorm of emotions in our piano teacher communities, largely because there are so many of us out here who have already been fighting those stereotypes for a very long time. Well, the full story aired on Sunday night, and I would like to offer some thoughts on what was presented. Spoiler alert, yes, I'm still very annoyed with the story, but there are some things here that we have to talk about, friends. There are even some things that we need to learn from the story. Now, truth be told, I didn't want to give this story any more publicity, so I wasn't going to write this episode. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there are some important conversations to be had here. And I figured I might as well strike while the iron is hot, right? We'll start with more problematic elements of the story. But again, we are going to tackle what it has to teach us later. So first and foremost, the biggest problem that I have with this story is the way the creator of this program is pitting himself against the rest of the profession. Now, I've read a lot of the complaints online, and This is something no one else seems to be saying. From the earliest days of this podcast, I've been out here reminding you that fellow teachers are your colleagues. They are not your competition. This is the first piece of advice I give to new teachers, and I speak from experience. There was definitely a time where I thought my success would be driven by my ability to position myself above other teachers, to prove why my teaching was better or more effective than the other options. In reality, I have found the best way to have a successful studio is to be a really great teacher. And really great teachers stay open to new ideas. They study what works for other teachers and they consider how they can improve on their own instruction. You don't need to position yourself above other studios, whatever that even means. We just need to be successful by our own definitions in our own studios. And staying open to the learning process is essential in my eyes. I have long contended here that we all have something to teach one another. You guys are generous enough to listen to my ideas here each week, but I have no doubt that there is something that you could teach me too. Any teacher of anything that claims to have everything figured out, no, they are not for me. That foundational spirit of humility and curiosity is what struck me the most concerning about the coverage of the Pyam method on 60 Minutes. I don't think you have to look very closely to recognize the whole thing is a marketing stunt. There are so many subtleties about that story that scream marketing over value to me. The emphasis it makes on this system, the Pyam method, and the promises it makes on this timeline, those are two things I vehemently reject in music study. There is no single system or timeline that will ever apply to every student. The creator of this method claimed that his students generally move from level 2 to level 13 of his program in about a year to a year and a half. And I just don't believe those are claims that can be made in reality. I think they exist for marketing purposes alone. I want nothing to do with a teacher who thinks they have it all figured out in piano or anything else. Furthermore, I'm going to say this. If you cannot describe the value of your work without tearing down others, I smell smoke and mirrors. Your students' work should speak for itself. You shouldn't need to belittle your colleagues to stand out. The founder of this program said point blank in his interview that he doesn't care how his methodology is received by the profession at large. He just needed to convince the parents. That right there tells you everything you need to know. His focus is on selling the experience to parents. And in the poorest of all judgment calls, he decided to build his case on false claims about our profession. Now, this situation is nothing new. Talk to any teacher who has had a studio chain pop up in their town, whether it be like School of Rock or Music and Arts or whatever. I mean, hear me, friends. Slick marketing will only take someone so far. It's why I don't like to hear teachers getting up in arms over these establishments coming to their city. The proof is in the pudding, as we say, right? So Focus on your service, your skills, and pay attention to what is working in other business models. Learn everything you can and don't be afraid to try new ideas. So, as for 60 Minutes, instead of funneling viewers into a marketing machine disguised as something new in music education, yeah, it would have been really nice if instead they offered a story about how technology has brought piano teachers together to grow and learn alongside one another in unprecedented ways. Or how at the start of the pandemic lockdowns, when we all felt like we were drowning, teachers showed up in big ways online to help one another out. And how all of our teaching has benefited from embracing one another rather than pitting ourselves against one another as competition. How about how, in a world of corporate greed and backstabbing, there is a profession that genuinely seeks to support our own? I mean, that's a story I would much rather watch. But anyway, in the move that should surprise no one, the story also showcased how the founder of this method is partnering with big tech to take the program nationwide. They've also pulled in big investors, including famed composer Hans Zimmer. I mean, it's all impressive stuff. But look, it's all about marketing and money, friends. And I'll just take this moment to remind you that if you keep doing your good work in your community, this program will be nothing more than an annoyance. It's not a threat to you. So here's the thing. Continuing to operate on the Christina Whitlock premise that we all have something to learn from one another, let's talk about what we have to learn from this 60-minute story, shall we? The foundational premise that this story is built on is the idea that we want to prioritize fun at the instrument. And when students are having fun, they are willing to work harder. And sometimes that work doesn't even feel like work because they're having so much fun playing the piano. Most of us can get on board with that premise, right? We can admit that there was a time when fun probably wasn't enough of an element in lessons, and lots of us have worked to change that. I mean, I've spent the last year and a half of my own research digging deep into the science of play and learning how to capitalize on those elements to make a more satisfying experience at our instruments. I've presented sessions to music teacher groups on what I call the paradox of play, taking fun seriously. I'll link to that presentation in today's show notes, but it is basically a deep dive into our 21st century misconceptions about work versus play. This 60 Minutes piece and all the discussion around it has come at a really interesting time in my life. I'm preparing a new session for teachers that I'm going to debut at the Iowa State Music Teachers Association conference in June. And that session is essentially the follow-up to the paradox of play. And it is all about pursuing excellence when everyone just wants piano to be fun. The question is this: can lessons be fun, playful, and inclusive of student interests, and still pursue the standards of excellence that so many of us love and value? I believe they can. It takes intentionality, it takes customization to each student, and it takes an open mind. But I absolutely believe we can make the piano fun while also developing proper technique and a respect for a wide range of repertoire. If you watch the 60 Minutes piece, any trained pianist is going to immediately notice shortcomings like poor physical technique and a lack of phrase shape. These, in my mind, are the foundations of satisfying music making. I believe we can teach these things and still maintain lessons that are supremely enjoyable. To be fair, there are a lot of elements that I agree with in the Payam method. Maybe not in their execution all the time, but at least in the foundational thought. Right off the bat, priority is given to playing the instrument, not reading the notation. Reading notation is a skill. It's one vehicle to be used to play the piano. But I wholeheartedly agree that students' ability to play the instrument should not be exclusively limited to what they can read from the staff in front of them. But here's the thing, this is not new. Piano methods have been working with pre-reading and rote systems for a long time now. The Payam method, covered on 60 Minutes, hinges on an alphanumeric system of reading before students are introduced to the staff. That's nothing new either. I absolutely believe in starting with play and transitioning to reading as a student becomes ready for it. For me, that never follows a predetermined timeline. Instead, I begin preparing students for the staff from their earliest lessons, but they don't realize that's what they're doing. I have no predetermined timeline. Instead, I've determined a series of micro steps that feed into the reading process. So once a student has proven proficiency over time in each of these micro steps, then we move on to the staff in its traditional form. Some students breeze through each step in a matter of weeks. Others take a year or more. It's really just a matter of meeting each student where they are and letting them swim around in each concept until they're ready to move on. If you're curious about that process, you can check out my Building Better Music Readers resource that is linked in today's show notes. That's another reason the timing of this 60 Minutes story feels so serendipitous. I put so much effort into that Building Better Music Readers resource this year, all about how to deconstruct the staff experience for students so that they can learn it in a way that is not intimidating and doesn't strip away the musical value of everything they're playing just because the staff appears. It's just so funny to me that the two main premises of the Payam method, this idea of fun and revised staff notation, those are the two things that also happen to consume my brain space this year. Life is just funny. So check this out. The instructors of the Payam method will start by writing numbers on select piano keys with dry erase marker. So picture middle C through treble G with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 written on top of them in dry erase marker. Students are asked to play patterns like 1, 1, 2, 5, etc. Now, if you've taken my Building Better Music Readers course, you might see some parallels here. I don't write on piano keys, but I do want to point something out. That music doesn't feel like music unless notes come in groups. It's a huge problem with how some of us introduce notation. Music is not felt or processed in single pitches. Yet we often present staff reading exercises in single notes and then wonder why students aren't getting it. I think this is one very small example of how the Payam method might be seen as satisfying. Students aren't just plunking out single notes. Music is being presented right away as groupings of notes. I think that is something we can all notice and learn from. Now, speaking of groupings, I must point out my concern over the lack of emphasis on rhythm that is presented in that 60 minutes piece. The Payam method has clearly hung its hat on an alternative approach to reading notation. But remember, reading pitch is only part of the game. Without rhythm, there is no music. I wasn't hearing much variety in meter or given any impression that rhythm gets much isolated attention in this method at all. So that is a big old red flag in my mind. Back to some good stuff. The school does seem to have built its reputation on helping students explore the piano. That's what they are equating to fun. Students are supposedly given building blocks to create their own music very early on. Several students were showcased in the broadcast playing original compositions. Now, again, any trained musician is going to notice some clear patterns. Like, yes, the harmonic schemes of the compositions featured are relatively homogeneous. Primary chords with a heavy emphasis on minor six? Yes, you bet. Now, I don't actually take issue with this because I too want my students to be able to create and jam out on those same four chords. Those harmonies have been supporting music for centuries, so it's important for students to learn them. That is something that many of us can continue to improve upon in our own teaching. One of the most important ways we can help students develop autonomy at the instrument is to give them space and time and encouragement to explore their own ideas at the instrument. And we do need to stop trying to race the clock and give students that opportunity. I'll tell you one more positive takeaway from the 60 Minutes story. They made the distinction that not every student wants to be a classical pianist. And I couldn't agree more. The Payam method, obviously, is not built for students who want to go into a serious musical career. Now, maybe your studio is, and that's okay too. There is room for all of us in this work. But all things considered, many teachers do have work to do in keeping music study accessible to students who just want an outlet to play. It's very difficult for those of us who studied music seriously to separate our high-level ambitions from our students who just want a way to express themselves. We do need to remain open to what else we can learn, even from venture capitalist piano studios featured on television. So, yes, Payam Music would be wise to reconsider what they have to learn from their colleagues around the world. But I hope the same for all of us who are training up the next generations of music makers. I do have to jump on one last soapbox for the day. Guys, I'm sorry, but there is this bonus segment to the original story that aired. It's available online. And it makes a claim that I am so tired of hearing. Friends, you do not need to let your students call the shots when it comes to the repertoire they are playing. There is this total misconception out there that letting students play their favorite music is going to result in fun lessons. Sometimes that's true. But it's only true if your students are capable of playing that music at a certain level of satisfaction. A lot of times, handing out early elementary arrangements of pop tunes can be a little discouraging. I just want you to remember that you are the leader of this experience. You know the repertoire. You are responsible for introducing students to music that they are otherwise never going to encounter. So, yeah, we can honor requests from time to time. Yes, we should pay attention to what lights our students up and take that into account when it comes to our own repertoire selections. But please, please, please stop thinking that you are only going to save a student by assigning them their favorite pop tunes or film scores, okay? That information is valuable. It's good to know what they love, but use that as a guide to understand your student better and then assign new music accordingly, okay? Okay. Now, before we wrap up today, go grab the nearest beverage and we'll share a toast together. Studio music teacher friends from everywhere in the world, may we all remember that our success is not dependent on tearing down our colleagues' work. It's quite the opposite. In fact, we stand only to gain knowledge from our fellow teachers. So I hope we will all remain humble to continue learning for all the days of our teacher lives. Hear, hear. That's a wrap on episode 257, friends. I hope this one gives you something to chew on for the week. Be sure to check out the show notes for today's episode because there are a whole bunch of links for you to check out there, including things like my Paradox of Play session, building better music readers, and of course, if you're interested in my 2026 recital reflections and group repertoire share, that is happening this Friday during our second Teachers Teaching Teachers for the month of May. Join the Super Friends crew on Patreon via the link in today's show notes for access to the live chat or the replay. That's going to be a good one, and I'll hope to see you there. Thanks for being amazing, my friends. I appreciate you more than I can say. Keep doing your good work in the world, okay? It's an honor to do it alongside you. Onward and upward we go.